You're listening to the Gospel Project for Preschool and Kids Weekly Leader Training, helping you teach your kids the big story of the Bible.
On this episode, we discuss Unit 32, Session 2, Paul's First Journey. So this week we are looking at Acts 13 and 14, and the big idea here is that Paul and Barnabas told others about Jesus no matter what the cost is. This, of course, is Paul's first missionary journey, the first of three, although, Karen, it's interesting, I have seen recently that some are proposing that it was actually two journeys, that we wrongly break the third one into two parts. It was actually one, so somebody may be aware of that. Three is what is usually referred to. I think most Bibles have three on the maps in the back, so that solves it, right?
Yes.
But just a little, yeah, that's the authority. Just a little interesting
Inspired
detail
inerrant maps.
Exactly, which we know are not.
Yes, making a joke there.
We're buying. Anyway, so yeah, this is his first journey, and everybody agrees, at least on the first one, where Paul and Barnabas set out from Antioch. Again, that was the mission sending church. We talked about that a few episodes ago. And they send Paul and Barnabas out. And as they travel, they experience some big wins, but they also experienced opposition. And what we see through this is that no matter what, they kept pointing people to Jesus. Now, Acts 13 and 14, there's a lot that happens. Again, we can't cover everything in the story that we share with the kids. So we just try to hit highlights of that. But you probably want to take some time and read 13 and 14 in their full from the scriptures so you have a better understanding of what was happening. And maybe there's some details that you find that would be meaningful for your preschoolers or kids to hear about, and you want to add as you talk about it with them. So it's always good to have us as leaders looking at the broader background text from where we're getting the stories every session. All right, with that said, let's talk about any areas needing caution or prep time. As I looked at the kids, I didn't see anything worth noting. How about toddlers and preschool?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot to note. One thing in toddlers is they're praying for missionaries and specify that your church supports. So if you can gather some photos ahead of time, that would be really great, just to kind of give the toddlers a visual with that. And then preschoolers are painting with shoes, and it's recommended to use doll shoes or baby shoes. And, just thinking, do you have those handy? You could easily ask, like a mom with a toddler if she has some old shoes. Generally I would be like, ugh, old shoes. But, a baby really is not walking around in their shoes, so they can't get too gross. And, you can just run them through the washing machine before you come to church with them. So anyway, just something to note that you may need to get some little shoes to do the painting activity.
Sounds good. All right, easy peasy this one. Then let's move to what we're excited about God potentially doing. Even though there wasn't much for us to talk about in preparation, it doesn't mean that we don't anticipate this being a good, meaningful session. So Karen, what is something that stands out to you about God potentially doing through this session?
Well, again, we want to hope kids will just be gripped with a heart for evangelism and missions. And I think too, telling people, sharing the gospel, it is hard. I mean, let's just be honest. We're always worried about if we're going to get it right, and how we're going to be received. And, seeing how it was hard for the early believers, I mean, maybe in a different way where they're literally being, hurt or whatever. But it makes sense that it's hard for us too, and just that we can look to their example and press on in the power of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and I think similar to that, as I think about the opportunity to talk about missions, and we do this quite a bit. I mean, we have the missions content built in to our preschool and kids content. So in theory, this is something that some of our leaders can be saying, yeah, we talk about missions every single week, which is great. I don't think we can talk about it enough. But this session, especially where it's the focus of the Bible story as well, it's always a great thing to talk about missions. And as you shared, Karen, it is challenging for us to tell people about Jesus. It's challenging to live on mission where we are. But I'm excited about kids having this opportunity to see how the church grew, how God used the church, how he used Paul and Barnabas' faithfulness no matter what. in this one. And then again, as we look at the second and third journeys, we're going to see this again come up more than once. Because what we want, as you were sharing, we want our kids to have this heart for telling people about Jesus, for living on mission, not only for the missionaries that we talk about and pray for and support now, but for their role living on mission wherever they are, whether that be close, whether that be traveling on short-term trips with families, and as they become teenagers, of course, many may go on mission trips as teenagers or college students, adults, but also potentially as career missionaries. That we have to remember that we can be part of discipling future missionaries, boys and girls who become men and women who choose to follow God's leading, to travel who knows where in this world, to embed themselves in a different culture, to share the love of Christ. So it's exciting to me to think that we could be part of God's spider web of captivating their hearts and pointing them toward what it means to live in mission. And we can have a role to play in that. And that's an exciting thing. So I hope our leaders are reminded of that and encouraged by that, man, a lot of the fruitfulness of our ministry we won't see for years, even decades. But how much fun it is when we look ahead and think, man, God was so kind to use us in such amazing ways. So let's call it an episode there. I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. We hope that you have found it helpful as you prepare to teach the Gospel Project for kids and preschool. And for more helpful resources, visit gospelproject.com.